a code red for humanity. Curb emissions and dramatically reduce consumption or face a world that is fundamentally different.
When Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green," I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, 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 blah.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero Carbon
East Off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista, Series 3, The Sky's the Limit. I'm Ian Collins. Well, COP26 might be done and dusted, but the analysis, the holding politicians to account, and the debates have only really just begun. This podcast will let no issue slide on these matters. The man front and centre is the green entrepreneur, Dale Vince. Morning, Dale.
Morning, Ian. How's things?
Good. You survived 2 weeks of COP.
Politics.
There was a lot of hot air, which is always the irony, isn't there, going on when you're at a climate conference. But there was a lot of hot air. But were there, chinks of light that we can say, well, okay, we're on the right trajectory?
There were a lot of cops as well, actually, I got to say. I mean, There was like a sea of cops around the place, which at times felt a little bit intimidating. I always feel a bit dodgy when I'm walking towards a kind of a wall of cops, like I must be part of my history or something.
And of course, something in the DNA just kind of...
And I did have the run-in, of course, with the undercover boys, which, probably justifies how I feel about it all. But, chinks of light, absolutely. I feel that COP was, in a measured way, on its own terms, given that expectations were low going in, our government hadn't prepared and all that kind of stuff. On its own terms, I thought it was a success to a degree because, we've got... firstly, the naming of fossil fuels is something that we have to give up, and that has never happened before in the history of all COPs because vested interests have prevented it. As people probably know, at the end of every COP, every country has to agree to the wording in a statement. Until now, every country would not agree to say that we simply have to give up fossil fuels, which is incredible because we all know that. So that was a big win. And the other two big wins were the annual focus on 1.5 degrees and every country's plan to hit 1.5 degrees. So before this COP, the plans to hit the zero carbon trajectory were not going to be reviewed until 2030, which is a little bit too late, especially given that we know the plans currently aren't good enough anyway to get to 1.5 degrees. So that's going to happen annually. And 1.5 degrees is a standing topic for COP now instead of something that, is a bit ad hoc. So for me, it's a ratcheting up of focus on exactly what we need to do, give up fossil fuels, and how are we going to get to 1.5 degrees? And we're going to be looking at that now every year until it's done, hopefully.
Yeah, that's not going to go away, isn't it? I mean, that's the good thing, that up until now, it was always kind of sort of almost a casual, frighteningly casual conversation, that we are government say, well, we like this idea, we'll try and get to it. And then they kind of moved on very quickly. But I think now it's firmly kind of ingrained on this agenda. It'd be very hard for any politician to swerve that again.
Yeah, it just takes time, didn't it? I mean, I think Paris was 2015 or something, wasn't it? The 1.5 degree target. And, bugger all has really been done about it up until now. And I just think that, as a world, we're kind of inching our way towards this. There's no talk of climate denial or questionable science anymore. Now all of the talk is about 100% cuts and when we get there, too many decades away right now, but that will change. And, we're on course for 2.4 degrees currently. We need to aim for 1.5, worst case really. And I came away thinking, do you know what? This was progress actually. In its own terms, this is good progress.
Well, it was enough to make Alex Sharma cry at the end. I mean,
did he?
Did you see this?
That was because Johnson came back on a train. That's what that was.
That's right. He thought he would never see it. The Messiah took public transport. But there was this very kind of emotional moment from him as he sort of closed up. And I thought, well, I don't want to sound too cynical about a man's emotions, particularly if he means what he's saying. But, it was was he acting this out? Was he genuinely that moved by what was happening or what wasn't happening?
I have no idea, but I'm reminded of Matt Hancock shedding a crocodile tear in the height of the pandemic.
Oh, when the vaccines.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah.
But I don't know, Alec. I don't know if it was genuine, so I'm not I'm not saying that. I have
But
no
it
idea.
seemed genuine. But then I thought, well, this is a politician. They're very good at bullshitting, aren't they? So,
That's true.
just to put it bluntly. But
That is true.
I saw this story that might intrigue you, Dale. This is quite encouraging. 3 in 4 people in the UK believe kids should learn about climate change in primary school or earlier. And I was quite surprised. My little boy is 7, so he's at primary school, and it does come up. I was surprised it wasn't kind of already ingrained into the curriculum.
Yeah, and it's not. And I don't know if we talked about this on here yet or not, but we launched something new a few weeks ago. And it is a primary school curriculum that we've developed with teachers that has sustainability and the climate crisis woven into every topic. And we launched it in September with 15 schools nationally piloting it. We set up and called ourselves the Ministry of Eco-Education. We're going to do secondary schools next, but within the next couple of years, we aim to get into 50% of primary schools with this new curriculum.
Yeah. Interesting, kind of tying in with information, if you like. Facebook promoting climate change denial during COP26. This is not a good look, is it?
Well, it's Facebook, Facebook.
Yes,
Actually,
Facebook.
Facebook is a good...
That's what they should have changed their name to. Forget all this corporate stuff. Facebook.
Forget Meta. That's just some kind of next level BS. And
I know, I did. But it's kind of funny because they keep saying, no, we're on top of this stuff. They did it with, with the coronavirus, sort of fake news that sort of snaked its way around the place. And here they are again, unable to control what is genuinely quite terrifyingly dangerous news.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and we launched a thing called EcoBot just ahead of COP, which is a kind of new initiative to scrape the internet looking for greenwash, actually. And when we set out, it was to look at climate denial, because I'd read that 30% of all of that stuff on social media was actually delivered by bots. And so we set out probably a year and a half ago with the idea to create an EcoBot army to have a bot-on-bot battle on social media. But it turned out, when we looked deeper, that the bigger issue was actually greenwash. So we set up this website that is flagging greenwash at the moment, which is really interesting. It's ecobot.net with a hyphen in the middle between eco and bot, if anyone's interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think greenwash is the new frontier, actually. I think climate denial is old news. I think it's kind of fading away. It's not the big game now. It's about delay, and greenwash is a big part of that. Corporates and governments kind of posturing and pretending, which is greenwash, in order just to kind of slow down the rate of progress.
A lot of the questions we've had in this week are reference COP. So let's start with one from Hannah. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a disaster, 10 being amazing, how do you think COP went? All talk or some action? We've touched on some of that, but let's give it a rating, Dale.
Yeah, I think I have to give it a 5. I think it's a positive outcome. So I should probably go for 6 in that case. Actually, I'm talking myself up here. But for me, the really disappointing thing about COP was something really small. And I think that's why it's disappointing, something the UN or Britain as hosts could have dealt with, which is the menu. The whole world came together to talk about the climate crisis. We know that food is one of the biggest drivers of it. And yet the menu was climate crisis causing food. And I just thought that was a massively missed opportunity to give delegates, a taste of, what it looks like to eat a zero carbon diet.
Yeah. So between the private jets and the menu, I mean, these not really good looks for people at the helm of this agenda. It's
about walking the walk, or walking the talk, and obviously Johnson's flying and everybody else is flying was a bad aspect, but just the catering. I mean, come on, we talked to the UN about this 3 COPs ago in Bonn, I think it was, and they were like, yeah, it's a little bit difficult. We know we need to do something, and so I was really disappointed just to see a range of Scottish beef and Scottish salmon and Scottish cheese, and I get they want to sell local stuff, but Glasgow itself had an amazing amount of vegan restaurants and cafes, some great chefs there. Those guys could have come in and done a local vegan or plant-based version of COP, and that would have been a real opportunity to platform the exact diet that we all need to be having in order to get to zero carbon.
I mean, if nothing else, you might think a correctly disproportionate focus on plant-based food would have been on the menu.
Yeah.
But that clearly didn't happen.
No, it's a shame. I think I read somewhere that maybe the 40% of the whole menu were vegan options, but I couldn't see that. And I called this out at one panel session late in the 2 weeks. And a member of staff approached me afterwards and said, "I'm really glad you said the vegan word because we're not allowed to use it. And I've been working 15-hour days and all they feed me is rice." And I was thinking, blimey, what's happening here? Are we in Qatar?
I was about to say, yeah, this is like the Qatari system. What's happening?
Yeah, so I think, and it's the little things I think that are most disappointing, and I know that like our government put food into their zero carbon plan and then took it out, and most people that are running big venues are afraid of the food issue. They think their audience won't like it, but we've done it in football, and our argument there was that football is 2 hours every fortnight. It's not a big deal. Come and try something different. And look, a COP is 2 weeks every year. It shouldn't be a big deal, for people to come and try something different. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. It's interesting because just when you think people, certainly within the media, are sort of getting on the same page on all of this stuff, Andrew Neil pops up. He said this week that journalists are basically the PR department of Greenpeace when it comes to reporting on the climate crisis. As the interviewer indicated, he would like to return to British screens in the future. What do you make of that?
I think he shouldn't bother. I think he should stay away because we can do quite nicely without him. I quite like his political kind of ding-dongs, the interviews he has with politicians at election time. But, he had a bit of a debacle on GB News, I think, didn't he? Was that the same guy?
Yeah, that's him. He was meant to be the sort of face of it, the chairman of it, but kind of, which made people think he owned it, but he didn't. He was just the kind of, he'd given the title chairman in order to sell it and give it some credibility, and then it all went, what's that phrase, tits up. So
he bottled it, didn't he? He just ran away from it.
He just said, I'm not doing this. And I think when Farage came in, he was kind of like, well, that's my last, that's the last chance you had of getting me, and now you've done this and I'm off.
Well, maybe he's got some standards then, so that's pretty cool. But look, I think what he said about Greenpeace is just a soundbite for attention. Do you know what I mean? It's not about Greenpeace. The climate crisis is, way beyond any single NGO. This is a matter of fact, a matter of scientific fact, and every government of the world is on board to one degree or another with the fact that we've got to do something about it. And so I think he's being silly, and it was just for attention.
Here's a question from Chris. He emailed zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk. If you want to get in touch, you can use that email address. He says, do you think Insulate Britain are doing the right thing? Do you have any thoughts on the prison sentences for the protesters? Because some are actually in jail now.
Yeah, they finally are, aren't they? I mean, I did read that they'd complained pre-COP that they weren't being jailed, and they thought the government were doing it just to avoid the bad look of jailing climate activists ahead of hosting a COP, which, would have been a bad look. So COP's over, next thing you know, they're all banged up. So I think they were probably right. I thought the worst part for me of that was actually the guy that was super honest, Dr. Ben somebody. He said, look, if I'm not locked up, I'm going out to do it again. And he got 6 months, whereas the other guys, I think, got 2 or 3 months for doing the same thing. Just that he was that super honest and the judge took offense. Seems wrong to me that.
I mean, their campaign is a bit more nuanced, isn't it? Because this is sort of about lagging your loft and insulating your house as distinct from the wider issue. They've focused it onto that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an essential thing that we have to do, actually, to get to zero carbon. It's a big piece of the puzzle. It does take government, it will require government action because, there's 28 million homes in Britain and most of them are terribly insulated. So we're just, shipping a lot of heat out into the atmosphere, burning more fuel than we need to. And it doesn't matter if we switch to renewable energy, if we're still burning more than we need to, we're making the job harder for ourselves. I mean, they're bang on right. It also helps to keep bills down and actually make homes habitable. A lot of people live in damp homes because of poor insulation and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, their cause is super altruistic. It's an important piece of the climate change puzzle. And, I support them, and I don't really care if anybody says I shouldn't and it's a bad thing. And, I just don't care about
that. Here's a final story to look at. We've got some other questions as well, though. Melting Greenland glaciers are releasing nutrient-rich silt with potential agricultural applications, according to experts in Copenhagen. Scientists are examining a way in which the consequences of global warming could deliver a way to fight against its effects. What do you make of this?
I'm worried, actually. What we don't need is a commercial opportunity from the climate crisis, like, the opening up of the Northwest Passage or something like that, an ice-free zone around the top of the world as a benefit of the climate crisis. I think
Sure.
the BBC once mentioned that a few months ago, didn't they? Like some of the upsides of the climate crisis, they put up on their website and then took it down again pretty quick. Yeah, we kind of don't need that. It's, I'd say that's a bit of a worry. But I learned something interesting while I was at COP. That burning fossil fuels, I mean, it is driving global warming, the climate crisis, and that kind of stuff. But when we stop burning them, we're actually going to increase global warming because burning fossil fuels sticks something else into the atmosphere, an aerosol of some kind that deflects heat away from our planet. And when we stop putting that up as well,
Wow.
it's going to have a push me, pull you kind of effect on global temperatures, which is why there's a big argument that food is actually a more important change to make than giving up fossil fuels. We've got to do both, but actually with food, there's no hidden disbenefit.
Of course, yeah. That's an interesting balance. So the world of science and scientific engineering, environmental engineering has got to find a way to counter that one, I assume.
Yeah, indeed.
James on Twitter, what was your favourite moment of COP26? I'm about to ask you your favourite as well as your least favourite. Let's start with the best bit.
I think my favourite was being pulled by the cops. I have no idea why, but it did tickle me. And
I love the fact. Do you know what I like about that? So you told the story last week is that at least one of those cops would have Googled you afterwards and they'd have gone, "Oh shit!" It would have been that moment in the play. It's only the electricity bloke, isn't it? The one we see on the telly? Yeah, him. Yeah. That'd have been a moment. You'd have been the kind of token nicked. Well, you weren't nicked. I mean, they were very nice to you, weren't they? So
they were very nice, but insistent. And I mean, good job I weren't up to anything. That's all I want to say.
That's very true.
But my other favourite moment, because I've got two really, is the fact that, Johnson thought he could just be super hypocritical, berate the whole world for the gap between actions and words, and then jump on a private jet to go back to London, not to go to work, but to go to a private dinner in a men-only club.
Yeah.
And he thought he could get away with that, but he couldn't. And when he went back to COP, he did it on a train. And that for me, that was a magic moment.
You mean not facetiously, genuinely?
Genuinely, yeah. I thought, this is fucking fantastic. Johnson's got hold of the issue and he realizes that he can't just get away with this mad hypocrisy, which was, inflaming me, quite honestly, to hear him say these things.
And it's also, it's just a train journey as well, which is a very pleasant way to travel. We should add that. And of course, if you're the Prime Minister, I assume, your people take over a carriage, so it becomes a moving office as well. It's not exactly inconducive with work. So probably more practical than a plane, aside from the environmental implications.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no harm, is there? I don't know what work the guy actually has to do. So I don't know if it makes any difference.
What's that thing? Running the country, I think, is what he'd say.
Yeah. Well, we can see a lot of evidence of that around us, can't we?
Yeah.
Being done
running
rather
down
well.
the country. Gemma on Facebook says, seriously, I thought she says, seriously, where do you get your energy from? I thought it was a question, literally, like windmills or where does it? But actually, she's talking about your own personal energy. She says, I'm 30. I can't possibly keep up with your output.
A nice one. Well, it's got to be a vegan diet, I reckon. It's got to be that. I'm going to put it down to that.
Yeah.
But that reminded me, it used to be a slogan of, I think of EDF, actually. You used to see it at football games. Where do they get their energy from? It was an advert. But you just reminded me of that, Gemma. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think I told you, I saw a documentary about a retired heart surgeon in the States. And I think he was 103. And he's only ever been a vegan. He's never, ever, because he was brought up, there was a slight religious component to his upbringing, which informed it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And he ate very well and only had a vegan diet, never touched alcohol either, never smoked, any of that stuff. But the vegan diet, he said, was central to his longevity.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes a big difference. When you don't eat animals, you save your body from an incredible toxic load that it has to deal with. And I think that alone makes a big difference. But, our footballers report having more energy on a vegan diet and faster recovery and stuff. And the elite athletes now in every sport you can name are doing the same thing and saying the same things. I think it's become a kind of established fact, actually, that eating animals is bad for us. So, yeah.
I just mentioned religion there, and Misa sent this email in, which I think's got a kind of religious component to it. Says, Dale, I read about your club on the Asahi website here in Tokyo. Your spirit deeply impressed my heart. I now listen to the podcast. Once COVID is over, I'm coming to visit Forest Green Rovers. Misa sounds like a follower.
I think that's really sweet, actually.
It's a lovely, lovely comment.
I think that's really sweet.
Are you ready to take up the cudgels of a messianic figure, Dale?
No, I don't see it like that. I really don't.
You need a robe.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really sweet comment. I love that.
Very nice.
And yeah, I mean, Asahi's my favorite beer. I don't know if that website is the beer website, Asahi, but Japanese beer is.
It's a lovely beer, isn't it?
One of my favorites. Yeah, I'm going to have one tonight. Actually, I'm off to watch James Bond.
Fantastic.
And they serve Asahi in the bar. But look, thank you for that. Really appreciate it, and perhaps look forward to meeting one day.
Dale, that's it for this week. We'll speak next week.
Nice one. Thanks, Ian.
Don't forget, of course, you can follow this podcast from your podcast provider. That way you get each new episode automatically. Do leave a review there as well. Really important bit, follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince and facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero carbon
East of